It is 4:31, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. We know that we have two board members en route and should be here within a couple minutes, so we'll vamp a little bit. But first order of business, I'd appreciate if everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Christensen, Mr. Pantera,
Here.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Here.
Dr. Lim, Ms. Wani.
Here.
Okay, and we may have both of our board members about to, yep, here we go. We just did roll call, that's all you, pledge and roll call is all you've missed, so, no, it's cool, it's fine. Next on the agenda, we have items for discussion, or really item for discussion of superintendent search process and timeline, and I will turn it over to Dr. Ogle.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you for having me here today. And to continue our adventure towards finding you the next district leader. And I have to tell you, I am really excited for you. And I'm excited because most boards don't get the opportunity to do what you will do over the next couple of months. And it's truly an honor for me, and how much I respect the importance of you getting from here to there over the next couple of months, because you really will leave a legacy behind. And the district is set up for success. And my anticipation is that this will be a very competitive search, because this is a wonderful place to be a school leader. And so congratulations to you guys for creating a culture that will be attractive to candidates. So I'm excited to be your facilitator and to move this along, and let's get to work. So that all being said, I've given you some documents that my goal is that we can have discussion and take board input and come to consensus around the text for a posting that will be then distributed through our national network and our Arizona folks. So at your place, you have this particular document. I just want to refresh members of the board on the 6 phases of the superintendent search that we like to categorize our actions in. And our goal is, before we leave today, to complete phase 1. And phase 1 obviously culminates if the board elects to adopt the posting language that we'll talk about here tonight, and the community survey. So the posting that I have given you is a draft of text only. And so if the board is interested in seeing, the kinds of creativity and graphics that can be utilized, we intend on doing that. But that isn't really something we should, take to the board for approval. But Mr. Droege has promised me to provide JPEG pictures to enhance the visual attractiveness and the sales part of this posting. And frankly, having been a candidate for several superintendencies in my life and having worked these searches over the last decade, I can tell you that most candidates will find the advertisement, they'll click on the timeline, they'll click on the links for programming, they'll click on the advertised salary range, and then they will go to work, on your website. And so, my particular style is to make the advertisement a nice little sales brochure about the district with the appropriate links, and to make it clean and easy for a candidate to navigate. So that's kind of where I'm heading. That's my recommendation to you. So that all being said, let's take a look at the profile and have discussion about the kinds of things that the board would like to have input on. So that's your place. You have this particular document. Okay, so let's kind of start there. And you'll see that the first page is a description of the district, kind of a 5-mile up looking down view for someone not familiar with Paradise Valley Unified. So, and I know board members haven't had much time to look at this, so we can take our time. But I think it gives a nice, concise overview to a potential candidate. And welcome thoughts and comments.
I had a thought.
Mr. Pantera?
Now, this is all great. Is it good or bad to maybe put some ideas about how we've been put out in the media with so many of our schools that are nationally recognized, or our ratings in the state or anything like that? Would that be important to put in this or not? Just a question.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look on page 2, we do have a link to your website that identifies award-winning programs. I don't have my computer. Let me grab it and make sure we kind of all have the same. But good thought, Mr. Pantera. And yes, you want to accentuate the positive elements that will be attractive to candidates, of course. So, other thoughts, comments? If you want to take, before we go further, does each board member have access to the internet? Go to, just so I can show you, so you can imagine, take a minute and go to AZSA, azsa.org. This is the homepage for the Arizona School Administrators. Let me know when you're there and I'll guide you. Okay, if you look on the blue bar across the top center there, there's a Career Center tab. See that? If you press on that, you'll see that right now we have a link there, and if you go to click here to the career page, and then you'll see that,
Excuse me, Dr. Olga, neither one of us see that blue tab.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you press on the menu, you'll see Career Center. Go down a few.
Okay, so you have to click on the hamburger tab before we,
so you'll see we highlighted the coming
Okay.
soon on the original page, and that has already attracted some attention. And then if you do the click here career page, then you'll see that right now currently my colleagues have had 2 searches.
thank you.
Several that have closed that were in the final stages of interviewing for.
Mhm.
But these 2 in particular, you can look at their postings and how 2 different boards had a very different philosophy about what their postings should look like. So if you look at Glendale Union, your neighbor, you'll see that it is kind of like our template with just some color and accentuating features. And then
Point of inquiry, President Case. I
austere.
just have a process
Sorry.
question. I'm sorry to
Oh, you're fine.
interrupt you.
Mrs. Christensen?
Yes, I'm a little bit confused because I have a ton of questions, but are we going page by page? Because now we're on a different website, so, and I apologize. There was an accident and I came in a few minutes late. So are we right now just discussing this website and not on any of,
Actually,
No, I think.
I
we're back-
diverted, right. It
Yeah,
was
I think
it was my diversion,
okay.
but yes.
I just want to
intend
make sure
go-
that I follow.
I tend to go through the document page by page, Ms. Christensen,
Okay.
but
Perfect.
I had a diversion in my brain to show you what these graphics can look like, which I kind of talked about in the beginning. So if you look at
you.
Glendale Union, you'll see it's very clean and austere. And if you click on Yuma Elementary District, you will see 11 pages with lots of pictures of Yuma Elementary students and graphs and charts and things like that. Now, you know, we developed both of those with different boards, obviously, very different, you know, beliefs. My opinion is the union document is too much information. A candidate doesn't need that because of the web pages and the Google searches everybody can do. And my opinion is the Glendale Union posting is a bit austere. You know, so I imagine that we'll end up somewhere in between those. But that's just to give you a flavor of what this might look like once we go live. Okay, other thoughts and questions? Okay, now back to the document. All right, page 1, we're kind of all settled that that can stand as is.
So, Dr. Ogle, I'd like to add, I think after you showed us the Glendale one, I would agree with Mr. Pantera that we need a little bit more on that front one, maybe some bullet points pulled out like on the Glendale one that highlights the schools we have and the programs we have in a very specific way, similar to what Glendale has done, kind
Okay.
of at that first block if you look at it online, which you took us there, so you have to work with us now.
Well, absolutely, that's why we do this.
But it's got that initial page. Again, it's highlighting that US News and World Reports. And I know some of our schools have been included, not in that, but in other areas as highly ranked schools. So being able to pull that out in bullet points, nice and clear, and to be able to put in those places where we have really high recognition right in this text would be ideal because this reads a little generic. And PV is not a generic
No,
district.
it's not.
So
No, this
if
is a special place.
we could integrate some of those unique things about our district that set us apart from something like Glendale Union, who's also on a search. That would be ideal, and bullet points, I think, would help with pulling that out, which we see here. So
Other board members, I believe, probably have a similar kind of reaction, right? Okay, all right, good thoughts. Okay, so we'll work on that. Page 2 then has the links to your strategic plan, a link to highlighting programs. These take the candidates back to your webpage. And then some student-centered district initiatives that I think you're really proud of. Some enrollment data, some ethnicity data. Any thoughts or comments about this? This may not be formatted quite like this, but for paper it is. Yeah, Ms. Christensen.
So in our strategic plan, I know that this current governing board has not had a chance to review those. I know that there is a whole section on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which there is a, executive order out on that where districts can lose federal funding in the next 120 days. So it's an aside. I just want to mention it. So I don't, it's not the right place to discuss that, but I did note that that is in there. So it's just a.
And actually, you bring up a really good point, because if we can get your approval tonight on the concept, on the text of the documents without the exact wording, then I can edit it real live once it goes, live. So should there be a change in regulations or, factors that control some of these links and all, then we can edit it in real time. So the posting.
while we're talking about the link section, is there any way to add, again, you have Glendale Union here, to add some sort of sentence that comes either from that strategic plan, so sentence on our award-winning programs and student-centered district initiatives, a sentence that introduces them to the section versus just a direct link out to the webpage, just to tie it in a little bit more.
Absolutely. I'm taking some notes as we go here. Adding an introductory sentence. Okay, that's a good thought. Thank you. Yeah.
We do have some amazing award-winning programs. So yes, we definitely want to highlight that. I would like to be fully transparent when bringing in a superintendent and just, I didn't see anywhere and mentioned about some of our challenges about declining enrollment and recently closing 3 schools, so that we are just upfront that we are looking for a strategic leader. So I know we want to put our best foot forward, but we also want to be truthful. And I don't know if we can mention that somewhere.
No, very perceptive, thank you, and hold that thought.
Okay,
We're going to come back to
Perfect.
that when we look at the qualifications that the board is looking for. Other thoughts? Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
So it's not super text heavy, right? And kind of stands out easy for applicants to read and review. I think I think I'd love to see a breakdown, number of elementary schools, number of middle schools, number of high schools. I do see like student enrollment by school level, but just to kind of give the, like
Good.
it's a large district and a diverse district, covers a lot of ground. I think that that's a really important thing for whoever this new leader is, like to really understand and appreciate that.
I believe you had 26 schools. Does that sound right?
More.
No, we have more than that, but that could easily be put in where we have
It's in the 40s.
enrollment.
Yeah, I think just
You
in
know,
addition.
high
Absolutely.
school students, X in X number of high school, however we can, I think that.
Or I
could be
may-
added.
I may have our graphic arts team, like maybe do the logo of each of the, we could do all the schools. I mean,
Oh,
put
there's a
little-
lot of
lot.
schools.
Or even, I don't know, or even just, and like you guys are the experts, but I mean, maybe even just a visual showing like a Google map, just see, so you can sort of see, right, them sprinkled throughout the valley, like at a glance even.
That's not a bad idea either, because you could link to a map that identifies, I think you have one of those
I think we do.
on your website. I believe I looked at it, right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, link to district map with. That's a great idea.
I mean, the copy on the first page does talk about an impressive range of, so I guess this would be then the place to let's start putting numbers perhaps in terms of what our impressive range is in terms of numbers.
Okay, but yeah, we can beef that section up, so to speak, so.
Mhm.
Okay, great
Yeah.
thoughts. Others before we move on? Yes.
Yeah, I concur with Ms. Swanee's comments, and I want to shout out to our marketing department. We have some really aesthetically pleasing items on our site. This reads kind of a little bit not as pleasing to the eye. And so I don't know if we can look, perhaps your marketing team can look at some of the things that are on our website, because I feel like our website is very clear and easy on the eyes, whereas this is just a little bit,
Oh, no, so
Rigid.
maybe you were just coming in at the beginning.
perhaps.
But, Ms. Christensen, so this, all I'm asking you to approve tonight is the content of
Content,
the
perfect.
text. And then our graphic arts folks will then work with Mr. Droege to bring in digital images that are appropriate for the document. And that's why I wanted to show you the Yuma Elementary posting that was just completed. And like I said, I think it overkill with 11 pages, but nonetheless, that's the type of graphical presentation that we'll end up with. Okay. Great. All right, let's go to page 3. And here is where your technical expertise will be particularly important. So as you think about the phases of the superintendent search, the 6-phase document, so where we are tonight is I'm hoping to seek your approval for phase 1. And that allows us to do the graphical representation, beef up the posting at your direction, and then start our advertisement and networking with the professionals in the field. Phase 2 then is, I'm going to show you on the timeline, we're approximately a month whereby it'll be advertised and I can begin to talk to candidates who are potentially applicants. And that will last approximately the month of February. And then during that time, I will ask your approval later for a community survey that your folks can send out to patrons, parents, community folks, and we'll be collecting all that data to bring to you at phase 3. The beginning of phase 3, I will report the results of the community survey, and then we would, in executive session, screen the candidates. And so that screening, we will reference back to the position requirements so that we can address each applicant relative to what you're deciding are the position requirements. So that's why this piece becomes important as we get past phase 2 into phase 3 of the search. Does that all make sense? So this is my work. This is my thinking, trying to think like you. This is all open to editorial comment from you. So don't be shy, but this is Tim's approach if I were independent. All right, so requirements. Current certification, certainly being a teacher in a public school system, at least 5 years of experience as a district administrator, and a doctoral degree from an accredited university. The reason I list accredited is some candidates will have online doctorates. And there's nothing wrong with an online doctorate, but it is differentiated from an accredited university doctorate in the profession. Okay, so any questions about the required? Yeah, Ms. Christensen.
Yes. Last year, when we were doing searches, we discussed non-traditional searches. So if we list these 4 bullet items, that would exclude a whole group of individuals. And I would rather get more highly qualified candidates than less. For example, in recent years, there's been a trend where some school boards are hiring superintendents with business backgrounds.
Right.
And they wouldn't have the teaching experience. They may have a doctoral degree. So I would, but I understand this is a board decision. I'm just commenting. I would really like to see us broaden our search. One of the search firms that we were working with in the past they were calling them non-traditional searches, and I think with the challenges that I mentioned earlier, somebody with a strong business background would do really well at leading a district of this nature. Also, the very first bullet item, that may exclude we have some amazing principals and even vice principals, especially at the high school level, and they may not have a certificate. It is not required by Arizona statute to have a certificate in order to be a superintendent.
Right.
So I would like discussion with my colleagues to see what their opinions are on that, because I think there's both.
Absolutely.
We have some great candidates here in-house as well as
Sure. And the
non-educated.
second part of the sentence, just to be clear, does have that person will have applied for certification. So, I mean, that mitigates some of that, not all of it.
Right, but it's not required to hold a certification in order to be a superintendent in the state of Arizona.
Correct.
Based on Arizona revised statute, and that's
Correct.
my point. Okay.
Other thoughts?
Well, in that regard, it may not be required, but I like the best candidates we can, the most qualified. It's like charter schools, they don't have to take teachers that are certified by the state. Okay, and that's why I think we have a better product here, because all our teachers are certified. You know, it's got that next level of accreditation that gives us more validity. So that's why I like to have that in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mrs. Lund? Dr. Lim? Sorry.
So I think teaching experience for working as a superintendent in a public schools is absolutely necessary. They need to have had that experience and that boots on the ground day to day of being in the classroom to really make those decisions, because these decisions made at the district level have the biggest impact on our students and our teachers. And if we don't have someone who has that lived experience of being in the classroom, no matter what age they worked with, I don't think they're going to understand the impact of the work they're doing quite at the same level. And those decisions may become very disconnected from what's actually happening in the schools. And I would hate for them to not have that experience and make choices that negatively impact our students because they don't know what that experience like is being in the classroom. So that classroom experience, I think, is an invaluable aspect for any superintendent or any of our leadership, really.
Dr. Lim, I do concur with a lot of what you're saying. What I'm suggesting is not necessarily removing bullets 2, 3, and 4, but putting them into the preferred attribute because we are, in fact, limiting our potential candidates if we have those as required. Well, especially bullet number 1, I would like to see that one fall off, but again, I understand that I am quite often in the minority on this board, but I am strongly suggesting that we need to broaden our search and have somebody perhaps that has business experience, especially with the challenges that our district is facing currently.
President Greenberg, could you elaborate if these are requirements we've had in the past for our superintendent searches?
I would say for the most part, yes. The last time we went out on a search, requirements were the candidate must have K-12 classroom experience and earned EdD or PhD degree and have or will obtain superintendent credentials, and then more information about the accreditation process is available at ADE. So
So the only one in there is the
Is the-
5 years of experience
Yeah.
as district administrator was not on there.
Right.
Thank you.
So from my perspective, and I appreciate the comments so far and very much about the importance of having a leader of a school district who's experienced, right, all sort of different levels within a school district. Additionally, we are absolutely, I think, as a board, wanting to find and be mindful about an individual who's going to be responsible and good stewards, right, of our taxpayer dollars, especially in these times. Very thin resources. That said, from my perspective, the superintendent of a public school, they're not in the business of business, right? Public schools are in the business of accepting all kids, educating all kids, and creating an environment that teachers, families, and students want to be at. So for me, like some of the highest priorities, are really I think captured in these requirements here. And and thankfully we also have a stellar team in our district, in our accounting and Mrs. Berrigan, and like those are our sort of more accounting business minds, and that at the end of the day, like the superintendent obviously oversees all of that, but within the scope of the duties that they have, I think it's incredibly important that that individual have a good rapport with teachers and staff, and there be a trust there, and that they can relate to the day-to-day lives, especially as we're having such a tough time, not just in Arizona, but across the entire country with recruiting teachers and retaining teachers. Like really an innovative, leader in thinking outside the box, and a true educator and a lifelong learner. Like to me, those are the qualities that are going to make our students succeed and give them the best opportunity possible. So while I think that the business aspect is incredibly important, I think that that's not, to me, like the number one like job of the superintendent.
Does anybody else have any?
So I do want to revisit the 5 years of experience as district administrator and the fact that that wasn't on our last search. And I do want to ask, is that one we want to have as a requirement, or is that one we want to move to preferred? Because that's going to eliminate a lot of applicants. And if we're looking for a more diverse search in this one, I worry that that one's going to keep us from getting people who are outside the administrative space for whatever reason they've chose. There are many people, teachers that choose never to come to the administrative space. So, and it wasn't on our last one, so.
Well, it wasn't on our last one, it just didn't come up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think in looking at what we're saying are requirements, you know, we are looking at a district with 40 some schools, how many other facilities beyond that, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Mrs. Christensen has talked about the business aspect. You know, we've talked about the need for instructional leadership. You know, what is it we're looking for? You know, this is a large district in the state of Arizona. There are certainly small districts where, you know, the superintendent is quite honestly the principal of the school or two schools that may be in the district. And the amount of administration that they have to do is far different than the requirements of being the superintendent in PVUSD. So I think those are the overarching pieces we're looking at in terms of, is it limiting? Sure, everything we say is a requirement will limit, will you know, give us what it is, you know, the scope we're looking for. So is it important that we want someone who has some administrative experience? In this case, we're saying 5. And by saying district, we're saying in a district setting. So I personally don't think it's a bad idea to have it there, but that's my thought.
Yeah,
Mr. Pantera.
I'm going along with you on the President Greenberg in the sense of if we didn't have 5 years, well, how many years? Would you want somebody running our district that's never been a district administrator? Right? Or maybe they've done it 1 year somewhere. Pretty much most of the candidates that are going to be applying for this anyway would probably automatically fit into that category. So I kind of agree that we should probably keep that in there as a requirement for that reason.
Go ahead.
Yes. I actually concur with Dr. Lim. Had we started this process back in October, I think we would be in a different situation. I know at least one school district on the east side is already doing interviews. And my concern is having such a narrow limitation on some of these bullet items that we may not get the quality and the number of candidates that we need in order to make a good decision.
So just to add flavor to the discussion, we want to think of a funnel and you want to start broad. And then during the next 2 months, we move to narrow, gradually step by step. So there's nothing wrong with having looser requirements to attract a larger number of folks. There's nothing wrong with that strategy because ultimately in executive session, you'll screen the candidates. And if there is someone that doesn't have the kind of characteristics that the 5 of you desire, then you can eliminate them then. So this isn't, I mean, it feels important right now, but it becomes more important later, if you follow me, because you think of a funnel, right? We want to attract a broad base and then sort it out. So, you know, we could certainly tweak this to be more, you know, to be looser, so to speak. But, you know, certainly that's, you know, I'll follow the flavor of the board, so to speak. And there are alternative candidates in some large suburban districts around the country, you know, with different, depending on the characteristics of the district and the person, with different levels of success. So,
President Greenberg.
Dr. Lim?
So I guess my suggestion for this one would be, I think from what I'm hearing from you, this does in some way bring in that business aspect. So having this one here and having them be administration does bring in business. Is there any way we can remove the 5-year aspect of it so that they're not restricted to having served a certain number of years, they still have that administrative experience, which is bringing in that business aspect, kind of how you indicated, but it doesn't kind of constrain us to people who have only been serving in administration for 5 years. While I suspect 5 years is probably better, but we feel like we'd get more applicants if we don't put a number there.
Well, I think, Dr. Ogle, weren't you suggesting we could just remove the bullet point?
Yeah, we can, I mean, in my opinion is it matters. You know, I don't get to vote, so, you know, you guys do, but my opinion is it matters to have an experienced person. This is not a job for a rookie, but 5 years is just a number, right? So, Ms. Christensen.
Yeah. I really liked the analogy you gave because I feel like we, at this point, should cast a wide net. I'm very confident that this board is going to hire the absolute best based on the applicants that we receive, and just limiting somebody that may have 4.5 years of experience, they may be an excellent candidate, but if you put that in requirements right off the bat, then we're
Right. And
limiting that
so,
individual.
what's the flavor of the board if we move it to preferred?
I would say I'd like to keep it as a requirement, but to Dr. Lim's point, potentially let's remove the years piece of it. So we want someone that has experience, and we keep that as a requirement, but we can use our discretion, and look at like candidates holistically, right? And make those determinations.
Okay, that makes some sense.
Because I'll just say, and again, you're the expert, but it seems to me there is some value in, excuse me, I don't know, I was like having some attack there, in having some of these requirements and have them kind of right up there, because I think it says something just in general about the district, right? Like it says this is who we are. You know, this is a great place to work, and this is right. These are the top echelon candidates. You know, we want them to have these. So I think sort of putting that out there could potentially influence, quite frankly, right? Like the top candidate pool, right? Because if you think about when you're applying for a job, right, you don't want to, it affects you. It does. Like, and perception is a piece of this. That's just the reality. So I would like to see us start there. And if we have concerns about the candidate pool, or it doesn't feel like it's where we need it to be, I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to tweak it at a later point. I don't know.
Sure, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swanee. I do like the way you worded that, because one of my sayings that I always talk about in our district, especially in terms of our students, that we need to set the bar high for all our students. Same with our teachers, educators, and of course for the superintendent. So I do like those thoughts. So
Okay, knowing that we are not voting in a working session, but what I believe the recommendation at the end may be something like keeping bullet points 1, 2, and 4 in the required area.
I actually think we'll keep bullet point number 3. We would just like to remove the 5
right.
years of
Thank you.
experience.
My
So
error.
we just want experience as a district administrator.
Yep. Okay. All right, let's look at preferred attributes. Take a minute and kind of cruise through those, and then I'll take your input on that section.
So I think the very last bullet point there is redundant because it's actually now one of our requirements. So I believe that one can probably be fully removed.
That one's going away. And in light of our previous conversation, I noticed that I didn't include a preferred attribute with a strong financial acumen in some particularly attractive wording, but we don't have anything about district finance experience or financial acumen as a preferred characteristic.
Mrs. Christensen?
I did have a bullet point along those lines. a leader who can balance academic rigor, operational management, and community building. So it kind of encompasses all of those. I had another one that said, can prioritize fiscal accountability and communicate budget decisions to stakeholders. And so those are the types of things that can really, I probably said that too fast, so let me know if you want me to say that again.
Actually, if you look down, members of the board, to the knowledge, skills, and characteristics, a couple of those seem very consistent with
Mhm.
your comment. We could move those up to preferred attributes. For example, the third one is
Yep.
Operational management and knowledge in those areas. And the first one is building community with the various audiences that a superintendent has.
Dr. Ogle, I have a suggestion that under preferred attributes, we maybe move the current first bullet point down. I think bullet point 2 and 3, but maybe in reverse order, would be more of our top preferred attribute, shall we say, if we're going to order these in some way. Well, right now they're in order, so I think if we want to move them, we should probably talk about
Especially
order.
if we want people who may not read all of the bullet points. What
Yeah.
are the key bullet points we want them to read if they
Yeah.
only read the first like 2 or
Gotcha.
3?
Like I got the first three. I'm just going to apply.
And I've got a few preferred requireds covered. I'm just going to apply without reading anything else.
So do we want to consider moving bullet point 3 under knowledge, skills, and other characteristics up to preferred attributes?
I think that's a good idea. I mean,
I would like to see that.
okay, that one consider moved.
I had a question. Did we say we were going to remove the last bullet item under preferred because it was listed under requirement? Because to me, the last two are kind of,
So the very last
Mention-
one now mimics our one at the top, experience as a district administrator. So this is experience as a district public school administrator. So we can keep both if we'd like it, or we can move
The nuance of that.
yeah.
Just to be really honest, not that I wasn't before, but to be very transparent about this point. Some boards have included a statement like that because of the experience of charter school administrators who may be applicants. And so, depending on the flavor of the board, and think of a funnel again, there will be some very qualified candidates that have spent school leadership years in charter schools. And that may or may not be attractive to you. You don't have to decide tonight, but that's why that district public school comment is in there. So that's totally something we can talk about at another time when we're screening applicants, but that's why that's in there, to let folks know that in a public school district, experience matters. Ms. Christensen.
if we indeed do leave that in there, there's a difference between public school administrator and a unified public school.
Yes.
And we are a pre-K through 12. And if we're going to be that specific, we are a unified district. And so I just throwing that out there to see what the other governing board members think about that.
Sure. And that's a valid consideration that other boards around suburban Phoenix are, wrestling with as we speak, because several of the elementary districts are in the final stages of superintendent searches, several unifieds, and of course, a couple of union high school districts are also. And so those boards that we're working with are having that exact discussion. If your experience is in an elementary district, can you really be successful in a high school district? And, some of those nuances that, like I say, you don't have to decide tonight. We're thinking funnel, but it may be important later. And you're setting yourself up for myself, and later the board screening applicants. Other thoughts? What I have now is adding a preferred attribute that includes some wording with regards to experience in public finance, and moving the third bullet point of knowledge, skills, and other characteristics into preferred attributes. And I don't have a clear signal from the board about the district public school administrator comment. To cut it or leave it.
And I don't think I have a strong feeling about it one way or the other. I thank you for kind of giving us that really clear, just understanding like that that's meaningful and says something, to the folks that are applying. I think I would be okay with removing it and again, kind of casting that wider net and letting us kind of make those distinctions through the process.
Yes, Mr. Pantera.
Yeah, I agree with that, but because there is a big difference though in public and charters, they don't operate under the same rules and regulations we do, and somebody coming from that school would have to relearn things and unlearn things. But that, I agree, it doesn't maybe have to be a bullet point here. They can prove to us that they can make that transition and they're a good candidate.
I'm taking that as an eliminate. We can, when we get to an approval, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
The other item, I'm not sure if we mentioned the last bullet item under knowledge and skills, because we were talking about finances. Skilled in monitoring multiple budget funding sources for compliance with specifications and regulations.
Yes.
Did we discuss moving that to preferred as well?
Actually,
Or was it just only the third? Because you mentioned number 1 and 3 under knowledge, skills, and other characteristics.
Yes, Board Member Christensen, I took from the conversation to add a public finance experience bullet under preferred, but that, to your point, then it's redundant with the last bullet. We could easily just move that into preferred.
I'd rather have a more general finance one in the preferred than this very targeted budget one, because it's more than just budget funding that we need them to be good at when it comes to finance. It needs to be a broader umbrella.
Agreed.
So I would like it to be more broader. That might also capture those individuals that have some level of business background that may have ended up in public education.
Have some public finance background as well as private, perhaps. Okay. All right. We'll leave the last one under knowledge, skills, and characteristics, and we'll add a generic type experience in public finance comment under preferred. Okay. Other thoughts on knowledge, skills, and characteristics? Okay. If the board's ready to move on, we will. Madam President, your thoughts?
I'm good with moving. Anybody else have any?
Okay.
And we can always come back to it.
Yes,
What do you
of
think?
course. All right, the next page then, we've included some district operational information to give a sense of the scope of the finance. And then the salary and contract terms. There are several different strategies the board can utilize here. One of those is to be a little coy about it and say something like that second sentence. The actual salary, will be during contract negotiations. It's very competitive to suburban districts around Phoenix. The more traditional way to advertise is to list a range. And I'm happy to engage in discussion about that with you with other large suburban unified districts. I have some information on those types of salaries. And so I guess not knowing your constituents like you do, Are members of the board more comfortable just right out front saying, here's the salary range that we're expecting to hire a candidate at? Or the other strategy is to use the generic, it's going to be very competitive language like I've included here. And then when we get later into the search, the board would need to arm me with good information to talk to candidates about. So what's the general consensus of the five of you?
Couple questions. One, what have we done in the past? President Greenberg, knower of all past things.
Oh, we happen to have that, right?
The last time we did this, what we had listed under salary and benefits was the following: salary range of $195,000 to $220,000 to be negotiated with a comprehensive and competitive benefits package. The final salary for the successful candidate will be negotiated and determined based upon proven experience, qualifications, and board criteria.
And just to add to that, one of the possible hesitations for doing that is, I think when we were looking at salary data, we were a little bit lower than some of our neighboring districts. And so if we do a range, which I am not opposed to, we really need to do some market data and look into that because.
Thank you for the fat pitch. I've done some of that.
Great.
Just looking at board minutes from some of your contemporaries, Peoria hired their superintendent a year ago with a base of $245,000. Chandler approved a contract for their superintendent last year at $250,000. These are base salaries, not including the benefit package. The Scottsdale superintendent received a new contract in November at a base of $225,000. Deer Valley's contract is 3 years old and had built-in escalators in it, so we don't know that number, but the base 3 years ago was $201,740. And so then there have been 3 incremental raises since then that I don't know the numbers for. So that kind of gives you a range of other large, sophisticated, unified districts that are your contemporaries.
Correct me if I'm wrong. If I recall with the Scottsdale package, the pay for performance, there was a rather high
Yes.
potential.
Yes, thank you,
Or-
Madam President.
Yeah.
And you're right. The Scottsdale base salary is lower than the contemporaries, but has more in financial incentives that are built into the contract. Yes.
And so the escalators and the Deer Valley contract was, do you recall whether that was a combination of like years incentive to sort of stay on and performance based, or was it more heavily on, as an incentive?
Great question, and thank you. The escalators were based upon raises given to other employee groups. And then the contract rolls, so you don't have to always be renegotiating every, year a new salary with your superintendent. It just corrects based on what the board authorizes for other employee groups.
Which I believe is something we've employed in this district. And I shouldn't say I believe, we've done that in this.
You've kind of
district as
done
well.
that in past contracts here. Okay.
Yep.
So I think personally, I would lean towards listing a salary range just because that's a traditional business norm that everyone's trying to move to try and create transparency when people are applying for jobs. So I would feel more comfortable if we listed a range, even if it was very wide, because that is the norm that's happening across the entire nation. And I feel we should be on par versus being very coy and not be upfront. I think not being upfront might actually reduce people applying to the position.
Very valid. Yes. Yes, Ms. Christensen.
As would having a salary way lower than our counterparts.
Right. Yeah. Now, in this environment, this is a market where we need to be very user friendly. And so, yes, you want to err on the side of creeping it higher. You just do. That's the market right now. So we could do a range of something like, 210 to 250, something like that. We could, I'll accept flavor of the board here.
And when we list these, this range of salary, but we're not include all the different benefits there as well, are we? It's just
No.
the salary.
No, great question. Thank you, Mr. Pantera. No. Standard practice is to list the base salary. That does not include incentive pay, 401 and retirement contributions, transportation allowances, things like that are all negotiated separately. Yes, each district is going to be significantly different in those areas.
And do you recall what Glendale Union did or is doing?
So I happened to, because my colleague wasn't available that night, I went there and had this discussion with that board. They elected to use the wording that is on there that you may have seen, that is that language that is not very, it's descriptive. And their comments to me were, we pay very well and our patrons really, respect that about us, but we don't need that out there. And we'll just talk to the candidates. And then their intention was to arm their search consultant, my colleague, with good information to communicate to candidates. So that was their philosophy.
Yes, and I would agree. I mean, I wouldn't apply for a job if I didn't know how much I was going to potentially get made. So I wouldn't want to, be making a decision that would be asking people to put so much time and effort and energy into doing this without giving, being transparent about that. And I also agree with Mrs. Christensen. We better be competitive, right? Otherwise,
Right.
we're kind of, making this harder for ourselves from the very start. So
Absolutely. And
I
this is,
appreciate the ranges that you've given us. It's a really good starting point, I think.
excuse me, but no, this is a great job and you want to be top tier. You just should be, because this is a premier job in this state. All right, so my takeaway is by consensus, we want a range and something like, 210 to 250, depending on experience. How does that feel to folks?
Well, what about 210 to 255? So we beat Chandler by $5,000.
I like the way you think.
Miss Wani, that's exactly what I wrote down to be 5 above Chandler.
Message received. Thank you. Okay, now the timeline. So these dates are just Tim looking at how we get from tonight to the 1st of April, which was one of your desires when we looked at the 6 phases on the graphic I gave you. Our hope was to get to the first week of April with a finalist in contract negotiations. So this particular lineup does that. But we have to now make sure board members are available, and we need to secure dates for board members, for candidates, because there may be travel involved and there may be compromises with their own professional positions and families, and also for the search consultant. Okay, because I would hope, that all works out. Okay, so I worked in advance of tonight. I worked with our graphic arts folks, and I said I'm hoping to get approval of the posting document on tonight, and they are booked solid for the next few days, but promised over the weekend that they could turn it around. And so that would allow us to post early next week and go public. And then what I did was extend the application period to include that last weekend of February, first weekend of March, and allows candidates that weekend to submit by noon of Sunday, March 2nd. That would allow me from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th to prepare for our executive session to bring the applications to you. Thursday, March 6th is your March board meeting. So the first question for members of the board is, Do you want to stay late on March 6th after a board meeting and do an executive session for screening? Or do you want to pick another night that week? And I need a few days between March 2nd and us meeting to do my work.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Christensen?
I personally have limitations during the day and would have to, I would prefer doing a Thursday after the board meeting. I just started in something new this week, so I can't take time off.
And I don't know the flexibility of the district with regards to starting your business meeting early, your regular March board meeting a bit earlier so that we can do the executive session work after. Or just plan on coming in and bringing food in and stay until we're done.
I feel comfortable staying late as long as we decide now and get it held. I have no problem doing that. So, and there's coffee, as long as there's coffee.
We can always make sure there's coffee.
Where's Deanne? And Skinny Pup.
Okay, and you already have March 6th reserved, so we'll just plan on doing, so on March 6th then, I will report to the board the results of the community survey in open session. And then we will go into executive session to screen applicants. And then we will come back into regular session to approve the candidates for interviews.
So that means anybody at that board meeting wants to hang out to the rest of the board meeting, they're gonna be here that late too, waiting for us to finish our executive session, right?
Yes. And Mr. Pantera, it's not that exciting to wait around because we will code the candidates to maintain confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great segue into another phase of phase 3, and that's done in an executive session. And so only the 6 of us will know who the candidates are. And it's critically important to the talent pool that the board honor that executive session confidentiality because you have people's careers in your hand. And that whole phase 3, phase 4 is confidential. And the names aren't released until you select finalists for phase 5. And so what I will do for you is code the candidates by alpha in some way. And then when we go into open session, I'll ask for a motion from a board member to bring candidate C, G, X, and M for interviews. And that way it maintains their confidentiality. And then I can call them and invite them to be interviewed and make the rejection calls in private. So great segue. Thank you for the fat pitch. Yes.
I was trying to get an understanding in our Arizona Revised Statute Title 15. So it's 15-503, and it discusses superintendents and terms of employment. This is since we are starting a little bit late, this will be an aggressive schedule, and I get that, but it's my understanding that so Part D says on or before May 15th, the governing board shall offer a contract for the next school year to each certified administrator. And I'm going to skip a little bit. And then because we do have an interim superintendent at this moment, we want to provide that individual, Dr. Reynolds, information as well. So it says on or before April 15th, the governing board, a member of the board acting on behalf of the board or the superintendent can give notice to the administrator of the governing board's intent not to offer a new contract. So we're kind of running into that time frame as well. We want to make sure that we don't leave our current superintendent, who has really helped us in this interim time frame, so that he has knowledge and information as well. So I don't know. What are your
I
thoughts on that?
appreciate the comment. I would leave that up to your general counsel to manage for you.
My apologies. I got slightly distracted during that. What is the time concern you're having, Ms. Christensen?
It just seems that so we do have a interim superintendent, and it seems, and I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just reading that on or before April 15th, we need to give our current superintendent notice whether or not to offer a new contract. If indeed something happens where we don't meet our timelines and we go past that April 15th, we need to be able to either extend a new or you get where
Yes,
I'm
yeah, I
going
think
with
I know.
this.
I think I know where you're
There's a
going.
timeline there. Okay.
I would expect that if we're holding to or about this timeline, because I'm actually going to suggest that we might consider ranges here, just, to give potential candidates a little bit flexibility, like if they can't make March 20, does that mean they're out? I would expect that we will have a clear sense for ourselves where we're going with this and whether we feel there are candidates that we truly feel are finalists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I expect we will be able to make a decision prior to the notification that we would need to give Dr. Reynolds. If, that's what we have to do. To me, this is not actually looking at what we've done in the past, this isn't an overly aggressive time frame. I think we're in very good shape in being able to meet it and account for that potentiality. So,
Dr. Reynolds has provided you a letter of intent not to return, right? So, I'm not your general counsel, but I don't believe you would have to notify him of anything, but that's up to your general counsel.
Right. The concern was if perhaps we didn't make a timeline to offer new is what my point was, not, if we do need another interim for any duration of time. I'm just thinking of all of the contingencies that could happen. And so I just want us to be aware of those dates. Yes.
Yep. No.
thank you.
No,
Thank
good
you.
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, so we like the idea of March 6th, locking that one down. And so far, if we can post by the 4th, have it open to the 2nd, that gives me 4 days to get ready for the 6th to meet with you in public, executive session, and then back in public. And then interview dates. The week after the 6th is the Paradise Valley spring break. And it's just fine to move to that next week, that week of March 17. And I just picked the Thursday because I know you have a tradition of Thursdays. That's the only reason that's there. I'm available the 18th, 19th, or 20th.
So I hope everybody's looking at their calendar. As I just said, my suggestion would be is that we give a range, maybe not the entirety of the week, but perhaps, as Dr. Earl just pointed out, perhaps candidate interviews with the board, to be conducted March 18th, 19th, and 20th. And that gives some flexibility if we have perhaps an out-of-state candidate who is only available on the 19th, and we don't lose that candidate because we only say the 20th. So that I would recommend we do at least some kind of range there.
Yeah, I would agree. A range would be ideal, though it would be ideal to at least keep the range open to 3 and end up it only being 2 days that we encourage candidates to be on. So if only one candidate is on the 18th and they're local, to ask them to shift to the 19th or 20th.
Right.
That kind of model where we have multiple, and if one day looks better for most candidates, to go with that day and drop the other day where maybe one candidate signed up. So that we're not here 3 different times.
So to reinforce these comments, I can do a to be determined, March 18, 19, or 20. And then when we finish our screening on the 6th, we could skinny that down to 1 day or 2 days, depending on what we find in the candidate pool and who you want to interview, I think. Okay, all right, I like that.
And so these should be just like normal business hour blocking, or what are we looking at for that? All day for now?
I think that it's the will of the board. We've done it every which
Okay.
way possible.
Yeah, Ms.
In my
Money, so
experience.
yes, I'm sorry to interrupt, I
Nope.
didn't mean to, but yes, President Greenberg's exactly right. So if you want to interview, 8 people, let's just kind of think ahead, think in the funnel, right? Let's say that you want to interview 8 people out of the field. Well, that's too many for 1 day, in my opinion, because it's a lot, and you want to give them a good, 45 minutes of FaceTime. So you may want to do 2 days. If you want to, if the candidate pool becomes more narrow and you only want to bring in 4 or 5 people, then you can do it in an afternoon, evening kind of thing. So
I mean, if we're talking schedules and we're talking about holding them, which I think is what you and I both need to do, Ms. Swanee, I would feel comfortable holding my entire afternoon and not holding my business hour days. So the 4 till, 7, even if 8 o'clock at night, if that's preferred, I'd rather hold those hours than hold during the business day.
that the general flavor.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so but for our purpose now, to communicate to candidates, I will do a to be determined March 18, 19, or 20. Okay. All right, so now thinking ahead again. So that week you identify the finalists. So at the conclusion of the March 18, 19, or 20 sessions, we go back into an open session and we actually name the finalists by name. And that's when the district gets ready for a media release, communication to employees. I call the candidates, invite them for a finalist interview. My hope is that we're able at that point to get to 3 candidates. My experience tells me that 3 is a good number to bring finalists in. It protects the board in case one candidate drops out at the end, so that you don't end up with no choice. But it makes it narrow enough that we can facilitate some community meetings, some meet and greets with different employee groups or parent groups and that kind of thing. So my hope would be that you can get to 3 finalists, not knowing what the field is like, but in a perfect world, you get to 3 finalists and we do it on 1 day. So, and the 27th is just Tim, picking the next Thursday. So that's open to your pleasure. That does get you to the April 1st artificial goal.
So that one we might have to knock around because the 27th and 28th are the Arizona Science and Engineering Fair, and I lead as the judge chair there. So I will be indisposed potentially Thursday. I will confirm my calendar. I might be done early enough, but there's the chance I'm not. So
Just in terms of past times we've done this, it's often been a daytime as opposed to evening because we've often had a community interview group and candidates have gone between
Right.
being interviewed by the board, being interviewed by the community, did I say candidate, community interview group. And then, switching, like if we've done 4, it'd be like 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, switching back and forth type of thing. So I think for finalists, we probably need to look at day time potential.
Yes.
And so it sounds like Thursday, March 27th is out.
Yes. So let me suggest that you move to maybe the Tuesday, April 1.
Or
the
could we
day
do
prior.
Tuesday, March 25?
Yep.
March 25.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm available. That's a quick turnaround for an out-of-state candidate, but it's not, I mean, that's not unreasonable. The 25th, Tuesday, the 25th.
Yeah, it's only 2 days earlier.
Or Wednesday prior or the Friday right after.
Well, it sounds like you still have a Friday.
Oh, you have Friday.
Seniors are on the 28th, the elementary and junior high are on the 27th, so.
So, yeah, the 25th or 26th.
I could not do the 26th.
25th is starting to look good.
That's-
I mean, that still gives
Fine.
candidates potentially, right, like four, five
Right.
days.
Yeah, so if a candidate's coming from the East Coast or whatever, they still have time to get a ticket and get here and, acclimate to the time zone, so, okay. But that's a date that we probably need to lock down without, without moving it around. Whereas the 18, 19, 20, we have some flexibility with folks. That one, we probably don't have as much.
I agree.
You like Tuesday, the 25th of March?
Tuesday, the 25th. That's what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
Okay, so that looks good for everybody? Presumption that this is a daytime.
Probably starting afternoon, running into the evening, and
Well, I think that, we can see how that works.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, in the past, we've done it always, so we've had it where it's been more than two interviews in the morning, break for lunch, 2 interviews in the afternoon.
That works also.
So,
All right, great work. Thank you, guys. Next page, the last page, we have the standardized additional information, linking to your website, linking to the application link. And the final piece I need your input on are the narrative questions. These 5 questions are just Tim trying to think like you, what would board members want to hear candidates write about? The purpose of these, they're 200-word answers. They'll be entered onto the application. The purpose is to get a general overview of the candidate's belief system in a kind of a concise way and see how they write. So take a look at those 5 and open to your editorial comments.
So I would like detailed information on managing finance in a business sense or in a large district.
Yes.
As we indicated during the prior bullet points. So something about financial acumen.
Yes. Now, one question I could pitch to you that I've used in other settings is to have the candidate provide the board examples of when they've had to compromise budget constraints and supporting teaching and learning. Now, that's a little different strategy than you described, Ms. Christensen, but it forces the candidate to identify when they've had either cut budgets or cut programs or not, or accentuate programs in lieu of other things. But that's just a thought. Experience in, you could do a question something like, provide examples of opportunities that you've had to lead in financially complex environments, something along those lines.
The other one I want to bring up is number 3. It's the only one with a question mark at the end, so I'd rather it say something like define your philosophy of education as it pertains to public schools and make a statement instead of asking a question.
Yep, thank you. That's
So they all follow the same model.
Are there any that you want to eliminate? 6 is a lot. You could get by with less. This is more of a screening mechanism than
Like on number 1, even about the awards and professional career, isn't there somewhere else on the application they've already putting that kind of information?
yes. So we could eliminate 1. And it's going to be on their resume.
That's what I thought. That's
Which
just
is-
my thought on that.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea, Mr. Pantera, considering your desire to have a finance question in there. So what I'm taking away from this discussion is eliminating one, correcting the context of number 2, which is actually 3, leaving 4, 5, and then adding a question about experience in complex financial leadership environments.
And this, Dr. Ogle, the suggestion I want to make and see if the board is okay with it, that number 3 actually be moved as being number 1. So the first thing they have to do is define their philosophy of education as it pertains to public school as the first entry of the questions. And then the other ones are very specific
Right.
items around running a district.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Good with that?
I agree.
Okay, great work. So let me,
Let
Go
me,
ahead.
let me ask Mrs. Christensen, does that cover the type of questions that cover what you would like to see in terms of a finance question?
Yes, President Greenberg, thank you for asking.
okay, great work, members of the board. Thank you so much. I'm going to summarize just to make sure I've captured the thoughts. And then what I will do is tomorrow I'll clean this document up, send it over to our graphic arts folks with the goal of getting it posted by early next week. Okay, so on the first
Sorry,
page,
quick question on that timeline. Are we going to see it before it goes live ahead of that date or at any point?
that wasn't my intention. I was intending on taking your feedback tonight and then letting our team go with it. However, I can run it by your board president to make sure that I'm accurate in my editing.
I think I'd feel comfortable if it at least was seen by our board in some
Okay,
capacity. Yeah.
so
I
President
concur,
Greenberg,
just at least in draft form,
yeah, thank you.
right before you go to publish.
And before yeah, that's a great idea because if the graphic arts folks
doesn't have
can
to
work
look
over the
pretty.
weekend, I'll have it Monday.
Right.
And then we can, President Greenberg and I can give it the final and then go live hopefully Tuesday, fingers crossed. Okay. All right. So on page 1, we're generally happy, but we're going to beef up with some bullet points, accentuating some features of the district. Okay. Second page, I'm going to do introductory sentences for each of the links. I'm going to identify the schools somehow with perhaps either a map or a graphical representation of your 40 schools in some fashion there. On the third page, we're going to, under requirements, we're eliminating the 5-year piece of the third bullet. We are eliminating the last bullet under preferred attributes and adding a preferred attribute having to do with experience in public finance. And we're under knowledge, skills, and characteristics, we're moving the third bullet into the preferred attributes. On the fourth page, we're going to post a salary range of 210 to 255 and include wording.
Just want to clarify on
Huh?
preferred attributes. The first one is moving down. Do you have that noted? I believe that was what President Greenberg wanted.
Right, we were talking about moving moving that down so that we either lead with success. And actually, I would like to put demonstrated evidence of a student-centered approach to leadership as the first bullet point under preferred.
Okay.
And probably going with what we have and then moving down the collaborative efforts after student academic outcomes.
And I don't mean to jump back, but
No, you're
when
fine.
you said map, it might be, because I was envisioning having all of the schools listed, but a map might better represent so that they can see it's 100 square miles. This is a big district. And so that, I think that would help with just expressing how large it is, both in area and number of schools.
We have, is there a link?
We do.
Okay, there, we already have a link to a graphical map. Okay. Yeah, so that's how we'll do it. Okay. All right, so on the requirements, I think we got that covered. And on the fourth page, we're going to list a salary range of 210 to 255 with the verbiage that includes actual salary will be determined during contract negotiations and the appropriate verbiage there. On the timeline, we've locked down February 4 for the announcement, March 2 for the deadline, March 6 for screening, March 18, 19, or 20 for candidate first round interviews, and finalists on Tuesday, March 25. And on the last page, with regards to the narrative questions, we're going to eliminate one. We're going to have describe your philosophy of education as the first question. Then we're going to go management style, examples of success in building teams, examples of success in building relationships, and experience with complex financial systems in your leadership profile. Okay. Other final thoughts on the position posting? Thank you. Great work, members of the board. Thank you so much. The other item at your place is a community survey. This is a survey that is research-based from our national association that identifies the characteristics over thousands of examples of successful superintendents across the country. These are the kind of characteristics that successful superintendents typically have. And so we've identified those and then allowed folks to rank order them and then offer text box input. Thank you very much. And so then the board would see all of those answers. Yes, Ms. Christensen.
First question, would this be a unique survey where one email address can have one response? This has been a little bit of a pet peeve of mine in past surveys that we've given out where you can respond 80 times if you want. Is there a way to ensure that one response per email or however this is going to go out or link or something?
We don't have
Is
a
it possible?
technical way to do that. My experience tells me that in a district of this size, you're going to get so many responses that any one person that enters 3 surveys or whatever, it's going to be mollified by the quantity of information that you're going to get. So I guess that would be my thought about that. I don't know how we would limit one per. Now,
It depends on the tool you use. And so there's different
Sure.
survey tools and some of them do limit. And I don't remember, perhaps Mr. Droge I don't know if you remember, we had this discussion last year. And I don't remember which tools had the ability to limit to one response per either email or and would this be coming from ASA? I'm assuming not our district, because that's another.
well, thank you for that. I was just, my,
Question.
you get the gold star for segueing into my next thought, because what I think works best is for the district to send it to key audiences. And so you send it to your parent groups at each building, you send it to your employee groups, and I'm guessing you have a distribution list of community folks of some type that are supporters of the district, right? Okay, so I think targeted solicitation is appropriate. And with the size and scope of the district, that's going to give you a really good flavor of what people think and desire.
I want to add to that targeted approach that we need to be conscious of our schools that don't have parent-teacher organizations and that those need to go to the principals and the principals need to be able to disseminate those, especially those are common at our Title I schools that are going to benefit from this being in Spanish. I appreciate that this is in Spanish. So I think that needs to go out to more than just our teacher groups so that it can get disseminated into those schools that don't have parent-teacher groups or engagement with our other organizations.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Good thoughts. Others? Ms. Wani?
You go ahead first.
Pantera?
Well, I'm kind of going along those lines. We have it in Spanish as well, but is there a way for anybody who wants to take the surveys to a different language that they can get it translated somehow? 'Cause we have a lot of other languages in our district besides just Spanish and English. So I was wondering if that's a possibility.
I don't know the answer, but we'll find out.
This is more, I guess, conversation for all of us, but what is there going to be? And I think in the past when and maybe I'm recalling incorrectly because it's been a long time now, but so this survey, point taken, like data researched, and there's a reason it is the way that it is. Well, do we have baked into our schedule, or is there an opportunity that we think we can create so that we can get some feedback on the survey before we actually get the survey out for feedback, right? Like just, even to some of our stakeholders to sort of circulate and say, I really wish X was on here. Is there a way to incorporate X to sort of get feedback about the survey?
I personally think as elected officials, we would be able to do that because we are looking at a tight time frame, and many of us have jobs outside of being a governing board member. So I don't know how easy that would be to, and usually when you send surveys, there's a couple of weeks for people to get them back, or just reviewing the content of the survey. I mean, so I don't, unless it's just like 5 stakeholders. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm sort of bringing it up. Just, I don't know if, through the superintendent and, like the principals association, for example, just sort of getting a sense of making sure we're not missing anything that we aren't thinking about because we're not in that position.
Sure. That's
Perhaps cabinet level. Is that what you were thinking? Is this something that we've sent out before, or is this something that
No, this is,
ASA?
no, yeah, this is
This is
parochial to
typical.
us that we've used in searches for a couple of years now and had good results with it. But, and we can edit it, or customize it to your point, if there are things. And my hope would be that when the position goes live next week, that the survey goes live. But even that could be tweaked because, you've got a month to work with there. So if there are questions, if you want to take a day or two and channel them through your president, we can add or delete questions and then go live when we go live. I mean, so yeah, Mr. Pantera.
Well, I'm thinking that, this is research based through the nation. A lot of the stuff we would put out to these groups, they would probably see everything they wanted. And there's a part at the end where they can fill in the blank and add information that would cover what you're talking about. That's a question that maybe we should have had on there. There's a place for them to put anything they want to kind of cover that area, if you know what I mean.
Yes, on the last page, to reinforce your comment, there's what do you consider to be the greatest strengths? What are our greatest challenges? And any additional comments. And so one of your neighboring district got, 500, and they only targeted employees and parents. And immediately, within 2 weeks had 500 comments, and they read every one. So.
Well, and
Right.
just to that point, I mean, that's kind of why I'm asking that question, because because realistically, we're not gonna, I mean, we will obviously like read through all of the comments, but if there's a way, right, if there is something that's so let me ask it this way. Is there a way for us to sort of review the data? So let's say an open comment where we can look for keywords and sort of see, did a lot of people fill this out and say something was really important to them that maybe was missed somewhere else? Like, is there a way for us to sort it that way?
So what I'll do for you, what I will do for you is before the March 6th. So before the March 6th screening interviews, in an open board meeting, I'll present the results of the survey. And I will summarize the comments. So I'll read through every comment and then give you in a graphical representation in an open meeting, all of these folks identified, finance as a big concern. These, increasing enrollment came up, 35 times, et cetera. So I'll do some of that high level separating of the comments, and then I'll provide you a paper copy of every comment. So, yes.
I concur with Mr. Pantera. If this has been used before, I don't think we need to be tweaking it a lot. There's a lot of other things that we're going to be reviewing and working on. And so you brought up a second point, which we absolutely do need to evaluate the data, but are you okay with just
Yes,
not
absolutely, absolutely.
sending this
I
out
just
to-
wanted to make, bring it up as a point for us to sort of just talk about. And I think for me, being able to, have a summary of those comments, that feels good. That feels like a good balance, and it feels like I don't have concerns about moving forward with the survey as written, as long as we can, I just want to be looking for trends in case we miss something.
Look for themes, yeah, and I'll do that in advance of the 6th. That's
Yes.
one reason I need several days between the 2nd and the 6th to do that work, not only to bring you, the candidates that meet your qualifications and pull out those that don't, but then also, compile that survey data, so.
Yeah, personally, I want to say I've been on executive board, for PVA, we do the bargaining surveys. And with a team of 11 or 14 of us analyzing all those comments, we had to divide in teams. It's a big, big job, and I'm glad they're going to do it. Okay, all for that.
This is a minor thing, but just one thing that just perfect as is, except can we add where it's parent of students in the district? Can we just put like a /guardian, like parent/guardian of students?
Yeah, yes, we can. Let's see. Student, other, parent, student, district employee, community member with students. Where's the parent? Parents with student. Oh, gotcha, right there. The third one. Yes. I'll get that added.
See, there's a potential for, I work in the district, but my kids are in the district, so now I'm getting the parent and the employee one. I get to answer twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we just add, we could maybe just, hope people in good faith, right? Maybe just kind of, if we had a statement that said, we understand some people have multiple roles. You might get this wearing different hats. We ask you to please just fill this out one time. We're going to just operate we're going to trust everyone to do the right thing and fill it out once. That's okay. So we were, kind of, Mrs. Christensen had brought up the concern about that, technologically there may or may not be a way to track multiple responses.
Right.
So I just was sort of suggesting maybe one way to bring attention to the fact that we don't want people to do that, like just recognizing you may wear multiple hats. We're going to ask that you just fill this out
Yes.
one time.
And we'll trust our communication folks to say, please fill this out one time, right, kind of thing, when they send the link, because it'll be a link, we'll provide the link, and it's electronic, and so, yeah, and yes, your team can write an introductory sentence. The board values your input, please one per person.
In that case, just because I work in the space of surveys, is there any way to make this question one where they can select more than one, indicate that they're both a parent and an employee? Like, I feel like their information might get pulled in different ways and seen in different capacities depending on what hat they wear. So to allow them to select more than one so that they can distinguish that they are a multi-stakeholder in this district. so we can
Great
weigh them
question.
appropriately.
I don't know the answer, but I'll ask our folks.
Perhaps in the other category down there, they can specify that, or we can add a note.
I mean, if it's not
mul-
possible, but
Multiple,
if it's possible for
Yeah.
them to do, it's the square boxes and other ones where you can check multiple at the same time. Please select all that apply.
Great idea.
Because it does have affiliation, so it may already be able to do that. That would be, because it does have the S in parentheses, which indicates that usually you can select more than one.
Great thoughts.
So along those lines, and I know, this is what Mrs. Wani brought up, are there any other pieces, if there are, that you feel, because these are areas, they're not specific attributes or skills or whatever. But is there anything else that you feel is not covered in the ones listed here? Again, in that bigger, that more general sense, as opposed to more specifics. While you're looking, I want to point out what we did last time, and quite honestly, what we've done in the past. That a reason I really like this approach, because it is less specific, is we've put in these really long, specific, we seek a superintendent who, and we've got a 3-line: inspires trust, self-confidence, and models high standards of integrity and personal performance with the ability to develop and communicate a vision of quality education for the future to the board, staff, and community. And I think that's a great thing that we seek, but I think we will know that from this, as opposed to saying, we're going to put you in a box that you have to fill this piece. But having said that, and also just so you know, we combined lots of things in here. The feedback was like, it's all important. So we're like, oh, okay, let's take part of 2 and part of 3 and part of 5 and stick it together into one thing. I think this gives us, as I like the use of the word trends. This gives us trends in terms of what we're seeing is important out in the community. But again, is there anything else that anybody thinks isn't covered and could be added in a category?
Thank you, members of the board. Great discussion. I feel like I have everything I need, and with President Greenberg's permission, that'll conclude my discussion item.
Yes, yes, Mrs. Christensen.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Ogle. And with your permission, President Greenberg, I just wanted to clear up some items and concerns that I had from last meeting that I've gotten answers to, and I know that the board hasn't met since then. Is that okay?
Why don't we, if you think it would be appropriate, we can go to the approval, get a motion, and then if it matches better there, rather, you know what? Additional board comments, go for it.
Okay. So one of my concerns last time on the January 16th governing board meeting was that the search appeared to violate procurement law ARS 41-2536 because the quote was under 10,000. Normally we would have to ensure that we did not do a sole source procurement, meaning we would have to get multiple bids. And my concern was, well, there was a lot of what ifs, and you and I discussed this, as well as I discussed with, I got input from Ms. Bergen. So just wanted to ensure everybody that the total amount of this is not going to go over 10,000, because then we would be violating the sole source procurement of ARS 41-2536. So I just wanted to ensure that I got all my questions answered, and that the whole bill will not exceed $10,000. And,
You're correct, and I submitted that, a statement to that effect to Ms. Berrigan. So yes.
okay,
The district will not be obligated for anything over 99.50.
okay, perfect.
To-
Thank you.
And can I add to ASA?
Correct.
This is beyond potential expenses in terms of travel for candidates, et cetera. That's separate, and that would be separate from any,
Actually, it's
Well-
inclusive.
Yes,
oh, it is inclusive.
That's
Yeah.
inclusive.
Okay.
Yes.
that was one of my questions that I did have with him.
apologize for stepping on that.
No,
Yeah.
you're good because,
The-
yeah.
The
So Ms. Berrigan and I
expenses,
had
I
that
did, I
Okay.
did have that
you.
question, and the expenses were for travel for the individuals that were doing the searches, not for candidates. And because there was that 19 whatever Bronovich opinion that governing boards are not allowed to pay for expenses
of candidates.
of candidates,
Right,
but
it
they
says-
can of the search firms.
We're good. And yes, that, districts are not allowed to pay for travel for candidates because of the gift clause of procurement laws. It's
Thank you.
considered a gift.
I apologize for
No, no, no.
my interruption before. Was that it?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that because there was a lot of unanswered questions from last board meeting, and I just wanted to ensure, since I haven't talked to any other governing board members, that I did get all my questions answered, and so
Excellent.
I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything any additional board comments before we move to items for approval? Seeing none, next on the agenda is items for approval. Mr. Pantera, may I please have a motion to approve the superintendent search process and timeline as presented and discussed?
So moved.
Does any board member wish to make a comment before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I
All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Dr. Oval. We appreciate.
Thank you,
all
members
of
of the
your
board. Great
time.
work tonight. You're under 2 hours. How good are you guys?
Wait, we still have to adjourn.
That's right.
Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you.